The whole change came when a very naive Bill Clinton wanted to solve all the problems of the world, and someone whispered into his ear that the Temple Mount is the crux of the Middle East conflict. He wanted to solve the conflict by solving the problem of sovereignty on the Temple Mount. At that time, the Muslim historic narrative about Jerusalem radically changed. Newfound claims that Jerusalem was in fact the capital of the Palestinians, even though there was never mention of Arab sovereignty in any of their ancient texts. The whole thing is a political matter and misuse of ancient history for current political purposes, he said. October 6th, the Feast of Tabernacles 2017, the Jerusalem Post published an article by Daniel K. Eisenbud that should be shouted from the rooftops because the Temple Mount has once again been turned into a den of thieves. His article, Temple Mount Denial, disproved one bucket at a time. In 1999, bulldozers illegally ascended the Temple Mount to surreptitiously remove thousands of tons of ancient earth to make way for a subterranean mosque. Countless artifacts dating from the First Temple period were unceremoniously dumped in a garbage heap in the Kidron Valley. 5 years later, two archaeologists, Dr. Gabriel Barkai and Zakai Zdevira, procured a government license to have the debris removed and transferred to Ekmek Zarim National Park on the western slope of Mount Scopus. And there they established the headquarters for the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Thousands of volunteers have come from around the globe to assist a staff of 15 employees in sifting through more than 400 truckloads of archaeological treasures, one bucket at a time. With only 70% of the recovered earth sifted, more than 500,000 artifacts have been painstakingly categorized and documented. One of the oldest, a 3,000-year-old seal from the time of King David, predates the building of Solomon's temple. Hundreds of thousands of coins, stone vessels, jewelry, and flooring tile fragments have been removed from the Second Temple period and before. Nearly 250,000 volunteers from all facets of society, both Israeli and foreigners, have come to take part in sifting earth from the Temple Mount. Dr. Barkai noted that roughly 10% of the datable finds sifted so far were linked to the 400 years of the Davidic dynasty, the First Temple period. He said, "We have from that time even a seal impression with the name of one of the priestly families that were responsible for the administration of worship at Solomon's temple, some 2,600 years ago." From the Second Temple period, during the 4th century BCE, he said, "We have a large amount of coins from the Persian period with Hebrew inscriptions with the name of the province of Judah, Yehud. And those tiny silver coins," he said, "are the earliest discovered that were minted in Jerusalem." One special find was a silver half shekel, paid by every Jewish male once a year as the temple tax. Barkai said that the project has identified more than 800 of the 6,000 coins thus far recovered, and they were from the temple periods, including the Hasmonean, Maccabean, and Herodian dynasties and the first revolt against the Romans. Barkai, professor emeritus from Bar Ilan University and recipient of the 1996 Jerusalem Prize for Archaeological Research, contends that there is really no need to produce ancient Jewish evidence from the Temple Mount because it has been universally accepted by scholars and researchers for centuries. But just 1 year ago, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, approved a resolution denying Jewish ties to the Temple Mount. According to Barkai, Temple Mount denial is a recent political phenomenon that began in the 1990s during the period of the Oslo Accords. Quote, "The Islamic Waqf itself in the 1920s and 30s issued booklets to visitors of the Temple Mount in which they said the existence of the temples is beyond any doubt. In Islamic literature, through the generations, there is a plethora of references to Solomon's temple and the temple of the Jews. He went on to elaborate. The place was shown to visitors as the Temple Mount by Muslim guides for centuries. The whole change came when a very naive Bill Clinton wanted to solve all the problems of the world, and someone whispered into his ear that the Temple Mount is the crux of the Middle East conflict. He wanted to solve the conflict by solving the problem of sovereignty on the Temple Mount. At that time, the Muslim historic narrative about Jerusalem radically changed. Newfound claims that Jerusalem was in fact the capital of the Palestinians, even though there was never mention of Arab sovereignty in any of their ancient texts. The whole thing is a political matter and misuse of ancient history for current political purposes, he said. Christian identity and replacement theology groups have gone a step further and recently proposed a scenario in which the Temple Mount was never the location of the temple, but was instead a multi-billion-dollar platform built by Herod to serve as camp and parade ground for occupying Roman troops. Director of the Temple Treasures Institute, Rabbi David Schwartz, when asked about their spiritual leader's book, The Temples Jerusalem Forgot, said, "I wouldn't dignify that book with comment," and turned away, refusing to comment. Those who denied the authenticity of the Temple Mount, both Muslim and Christian, completely disregard the Temple Mount survey conducted by the man considered to be the father of biblical archaeology, Conrad Schick. The German architect, missionary to the Jews, and city engineer for Jerusalem was contracted by the Ottoman Turks to survey the Temple Mount 150 years ago. The expansive multi-million gallon cisterns under the Temple Plaza, the conduits that brought water from the springs in Jerusalem and beyond, and the massive stone arches that support and leveled the Temple